Welcome to today's webinar, courtesy of the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. Discover no-cost, valuable business services to help you thrive, whether starting your entrepreneurial journey or scaling your existing business. We have the resources and expertise to help you succeed. For more information, please visit our website or text 502-977-5800. Thank you for joining us today. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions or engage with our speaker. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome everyone to Toolkit Tuesday. And if you're new, joining here for the first time, I'm Dave Etkin. I'm the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. Thanks for joining us today. And you know what? Every Tuesday, we bring in experts to give you practical tools that you can put to work in your business right away. But as always, I'm joined with my good friend and colleague, Janet Flaw. How are you today, Janet?
I'm good. I'm trying to stay dry here, but yeah, good overall. It's October. It's great.
In the midst of our monsoon season, which is just
Yes.
fine. And as always, just to make sure that you can see and hear us well, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a toolbar. And if you don't, just hover right on the bottom. It should pop up and you'll see the little chat button. Just click on the chat button. And if you wouldn't mind just saying hello, tell me your name and where you're joining from so we can kind of make sure there's people out there. I can see you popping in. But just to make sure, I just said hello to everyone. See if somebody else will say hello back. Seeing our numbers popping. I know you're there. Just say hello and tell us where you're joining from. Hi, Krista. Hi, Katie. Good to see ya. Katie is one of our new center directors in Berea, Kentucky. So if you get down that way, stop in and say hello. All right, I can see you guys popping in. The numbers are jumping. I know you're out there. Hey, Jackie. Hi, Brandy. Primraj from Louisville. Got a lot of local folks. Usually we get folks from all over the country, so it's always fun for me to see what's going on. So appreciate you guys doing that. You know, I generally try to find guests that can talk to things that I'm kind of experiencing at the moment. So one of the most common things I've been hearing from small business owners lately is, how do I get a shot at selling to the big guys? I've had people pop in and say, I've got this thing I think Norton Healthcare would really benefit from, but how do I get on the door? How do you talk to Norton Healthcare, or Ford, or GE, a corporate giant? It's tough to get through the door with those guys. So today we're lucky enough to have someone who's done exactly that and done it really well. I'd like to introduce you guys to Tiffany Wright, my good friend. She has had a career selling enterprise software to Fortune 100 companies, state and local governments, and she really kind of knows how to break through the noise. And when we first met a few years ago and we were talking about stuff and I was asking what you did, and I was just blown away about what you do, because it has got to be the hardest thing in the world. I can't imagine me even making a dent into that. So I was just, I've always wanted to kind of get you on here, kind of pick your brain. And in social settings, I don't think it's proper to start talking shop like that. But after a number of our clients, and my clients actually have asked about specifically Norton and GE and how to get in there, I thought, well, I'm just going to check in with Tiffany, see if she's got a few minutes to share with us. So Tiffany, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So hopefully we can kind of get a little bit of the mystery out of the method so we can understand what to do. And hopefully Tiffany will share her secret playbook. And so when everybody leaves here today, you at least have some little tidbits, some ideas and some things to use in your day to day when you're trying to work through this whole sales thing. So Tiffany, how'd you get started on this? I mean, this is just not a career choice that I would choose.
Well, I went to school for communication, and I do think that part of sales is being a good communicator.
Mhm.
So I think we all have to start there with, are you an effective communicator? And from there, I went on to work in advertising and public relations, and then marketing strategy. And then ultimately, made a transition over to sales from being the business development director of Frost Brown Todd, a big law firm here in town. And so making that transition, I went from selling on behalf of a law firm to selling directly to large law firms. So we're talking about law firms that have, 1,000+ employees. So that's kind of how I made the transition, was into an audience that I was already familiar
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe give us some background, like the first big client you got. I mean, what did you do? How did you do that?
Well, it's usually a joint effort, and that takes some skill to identify what your product fits with. So, where is their alignment? And maybe that's just from, reading the paper and seeing an issue that somebody's facing, or you just know that your product fits really well with this group. We're very fortunate to live in a time where we have more access to information than we've ever had before. So I think about our forefathers who didn't have any access to the internet and what's going on. My biggest one, the biggest deal I've ever closed, was with a state government, and it was an issue that I knew that they had from reading in the papers, reading online, and started building some rapport, approaching them with email of all things, but a well-crafted email that was targeted, and then getting conversations with low-level people, which I think often people go straight to the top, but you begin identifying the challenges with the people outside on the fringes. And I think that's a common mistake. So in my biggest deal, as you asked me about, my biggest first deal, one of my key influencers was somebody that walked me from the front door to the meeting room to meet with someone. But that person gave me intel and became a champion along the way. I couldn't have closed the deal without that person who walked me from the lobby to the conference room. And I think that often people underestimate those people, those low-level people that can help you win a deal. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you kind of got a process.
I do.
What is that process? If you wouldn't mind sharing your secrets with everyone.
Sure. And
out there.
knowing I was coming to talk with you today, I did think about some of the most impactful resources that I've had over the years. So I'd like to make some recommendations on the audience to some reading material. So there's a great sales methodology called the MEDPIC, MEDPIC. And MEDPIC will help you understand all the qualifiers that you really need to do business with a sophisticated organization. So one of those things, the M is for metrics. So showing measurable value. So the emails that I send out aren't generic and talking about me and my product. It's talking about the impact that you're able to make. The E is for economic buyer. So that's understanding who has the purse strings. Because if you're what we call single threaded in a deal, so you've only got one relationship with one person. Single threaded, it's going to be a real challenge. So you need to know who's your economic buyer, because as you had mentioned to me earlier, that's the person that can squash the deal. You can have all the buy-in in the world, and then at the end of the day, your economic buyer says, we're not spending the money on this. And then you've invested a year or however long. The D is for the decision criteria. So how would they make a decision on making a purchase? What are the key influences that they're going to be impacted by? P is pain. Dave and I were talking before the session started that, a lot of times your biggest competitor is not doing anything. So, it's really easy for people to just not do anything. So you have to be solving some sort of a pain. What's the identified problem that they have? Not the problem you think they have, but their problem from their mouth. I is identifying the process. So what's the buying journey? Who's going to have to sign off? What are the processes? Are they going to need insurance from you? What are they going to need from you to close a deal? And then C is your champion. So in the example I used earlier, Donald was my champion. And Donald was originally just the guy that I thought was walking me to the conference room. But Donald ended up being my real champion. And as things fizzled, he helped me re-engage the group. So I'd love everybody to reference the MedPick methodology and then also the Challenger Sales book. There's a great book about Challenger sales. And that's really about coming to a discussion to challenge what's happening. And this isn't in an argumentative way, but it's challenging it and coming to them as an expert and bringing value and not just trying to sell yourself. Because I think that's how salespeople get a bad reputation, is that we're just pushing product instead of really engaging in a thoughtful discussion.
Well, how do you mentioned some research. How do you decide which corporations or companies to go after? What's your process there?
Well, there are a lot of different angles to that, but I think identifying the need is the first piece. So sometimes that's just as simple as you've read an article about something, or it may be somebody that you have, one step of separation from somebody there, or you've heard something, or you just know your product is a great fit for this organization. And you can do a lot of research online to identify who those stakeholders are within that organization. So for me, I have a really defined, at this point in my career, I have a very defined market that I'm going after, but I have a lot of agencies within my target, and I have to read and absorb a lot of information. So sometimes I've even done something as simple as tell me organizations in blah, blah, blah geography that are having an issue. We talked about ChatGPT and some
Right.
of the AI resources. I mean, there's such great tools now in helping you to identify who's having a challenge right now with whatever service that you're able to provide.
Yeah. It reminds me, I forget who says it, but most sales are like people, problem, and the solution. So if you can identify the person or people or the company, I guess.
Yeah.
Then and then find that problem. So once you've done that, and you kind of research, you come up with like a little target. And I'm going to put myself in this place. Now I'm looking at this giant corporation. Now what? What do I do? I know you need me, but how do I get them to notice me? Someone to notice me.
Well, you need a strategy.
Okay.
You need a
Good
strategy.
plan.
And I do think that a lot of times we miss the strategy piece. And since I come from more of a marketing background, I do approach my sales with more of a marketing strategy. So when I look at my targets, and I don't know if your audience is familiar with what's called a pipeline.
I think so.
Okay, yeah. So, you want to have your sales pipeline. What's your funnel look like? So you need a healthy mix of large and small. So you're working your small deals that kind of keep the lights on for you, but you're pursuing your bigger deals. So beginning steps of strategy is here's our small wins, here's our elephants, as you refer to them.
Go all in.
We're going to go after these elephants, but these elephants are going to take a really long time to get there. So, aligning with associations has been a very valuable tool for me.
Really?
So, if there's a professional association related to whatever product you're selling. So, one time I was aligning with environmental health professionals. And I started going to their different association meetings and showing up and listening. And that's always one of the best parts, is listening. So in this instance, I did kind of what I called my roadshow. And I went to every one of these trade association meetings across the state that I was attending.
Okay.
And I learned from the people on the ground what the challenges were with the technology that they were using. And this wasn't my buyer. This was infiltrating everybody that touched that software.
Right.
And so when it came time to bid and have those conversations at the higher level, I understood. I understood what the challenges were. even maybe at a closer level than that decision maker himself, because these people were talking candid to me. So I think establishing your strategy, aligning where you can, what can you do to learn the most about the challenge? And some people don't want to put in that effort. It's
Mhm.
long-term commitment.
Right.
But the deal that I'm talking about that I went around, to all these trade associations, it was a $12 million contract. It was worth my time. It took 18 months to close that, but um, you have to put in a lot of legwork. And I actually, ultimately, when I was giving that presentation, I showed a roadshow. So it showed my commitment to understanding the challenges that they were facing.
I
So it
see.
also got to kind of tell a story of my commitment. So you have to be creative and find ways to learn, but I think that that's always the most successful way to approach it. I thought of this the other day too, because I was at a car lot. If you go to a car lot, there are a couple salespeople, they'll walk out and they'll just start selling you a car.
Right.
And then there are also the guys that walk out, or ladies, and say, "What brings you in today?" That simple question of what brings you in today tells them which path to go down.
Right.
So they know if they're trying to sell you a sports car or a minivan. But if they just started selling you the Toyota Camry, they have no awareness of what you need. So
Exactly.
you got to ask those questions and find creative avenues to ask those questions, even if they're low level people or maybe business partners. So maybe you find out that a law firm that does a lot of work for them, and you can go and ask those questions of that business partner, to understand them better. But a lot of it is just in the questions that you ask up front.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, going off on a little bit of a tangent. So, what you're talking about, I think is, you're kind of purpose built for this. A lot of business owners are good at what they do. Sales are hard,
Yes.
sales are hard. And what kind of tips would you tell somebody to, you just mentioned, well, I went to the, associations and started talking to everybody. Well, some people just go to the association, stand there in the corner and look at
Right.
everybody.
Oh, yes. Well, and as I mentioned, I did do business development at a large law firm, at an accounting firm. So I am very used to the people that want to,
Right.
you got to lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
And I would just say, identify your skill set, and improve where you can. Communication, sales skills, they're not a fixed, of course, as you said, I'm from a long line of salespeople. My children are in sales. So it definitely runs in our DNA, but it is a skill that you can practice and get better at. There's Toastmasters, believe it or not. I even joined Toastmasters at
Really?
one point. And what that is just as a group that gets together and you give little short snippets on very comfortable topics. So maybe you're just talking about a new dog that you adopted last week, but
Okay.
it gives you a safe environment to practice those public speaking skills. So it is a skill that you can learn, and you can rehearse those. When you go to Thanksgiving dinner and you're interacting with your family, make a conscious effort to, like, I'm going to try to initiate conversation. Practicing some of those skills, you can improve. And then ultimately, maybe your business is at a point where you can hire somebody to come in and help you with it. It might be an area that would pay off as
Yeah.
well as, hiring somebody.
Right. Um, as part of the research and that you do, and you've talked quite a bit about the problem, which I think is great, but sometimes, how do you keep from making like assumptions based on how excited you are about what you have? You make a false assumption that this is really good for them, but really they don't see it as a problem. I mean, how do you protect yourself from that?
Asking the questions early on. So nobody wants to waste their time, and these deals do take a lot of effort.
Mm.
So I think one of the most common things now is you just get dismissed at the front door, like you had mentioned earlier, that you have people that are calling on GE or other places, and they have a gatekeeper. They have a gatekeeper that just shuts them out before they've had a chance to even introduce themselves. Um, I've done things even like calling at 6:30 when I know that that person is still sitting at their desk, but their gatekeeper is gone. And that was actually successful for me with Home Depot of all people.
Wow.
A Home Depot buyer that I waited until after his secretary left. And then he was like, "Okay, I'll talk to you. Send me your packet." So, but back to your question about, discovering things early. I think that asking the insightful questions and not being afraid to ask them. So, I've sat in meetings with other people that are, like you were saying earlier, they're afraid to ask questions or
Mhm.
initiate the conversation.
Right.
And I've asked questions like, you could say, um, who else are you talking to? What other vendors are you speaking to? And that's really a question that's puts them in a defensive posture because they're like, I shouldn't tell you this. But you could say, have you ever explored this issue before? And how has that worked before?
Mm-hmm.
So asking those open-ended questions, instead of yes/no questions, will often lead you into all kinds of information that you wouldn't have otherwise asked.
I guess that's a way to identify a problem that they didn't know they had,
Mhm.
and you didn't know they had those kind of conversations.
Yes.
That's what you're looking for then.
Yes. The open-ended questions get you a lot more. My boss, when we go in to visit prospects, he says, "Why do people tell you the things that they tell you?" Because sometimes people just open up like a book because ask them, what impact is that making?
Mhm.
What impact is that challenge? And then I always at the end recap with, so what I heard you say
Right.
is
Right.
that to validate. And then sometimes they'll correct you, no, that's not really the issue. I think that's coming from this. So validating at the
Yeah.
end.
I've noticed that some people hear what you say, other people kind of feel what you say, but their impression is kind of nebulous, and that little technique kind of crystallizes that.
Yes. And I usually start presentations once I've kind of done all my research and I'm making an actual presentation or a pitch. I'll start one of the very first slides is what I heard,
Mhm.
just to validate that before you go into your presentation, because maybe you need to like alter what you're saying on the fly. And that does happen. Uh,
Well, so what I've heard is is that preparation and research are probably your most important tool that you could do,
Absolutely.
understanding what that is. So,
Mhm.
so everybody out there, if you have any quick questions for Tiffany, just put them in the chat. And if you have specific questions about your specific products, your business, now's the time to get some advice. So I'll be watching the chat. Put them in there, and then we will get those addressed for you. So now we've done the research. We think we've identified the problem. What's the best thing you can do to get your foot in the door? I mean,
It varies by organization. It's a hard question to answer because it really depends on which organization you're going after. Um, Probably one of my and currently I use a lot of different methods. I have a cold call rep who does phone calls for me.
okay.
And of course, any small business can do that as well. And those are more just very low. It's not a sales pitch. It's not the elevator pitch. I can't stand the elevator pitch. It's a conversation. It's trying to open a door to a conversation. And I also use, as we were talking about earlier, emails, inviting them to events. One of the best ways that you can get that traction is by presenting yourself as an expert,
Mm-hmm.
knowledgeable. So, attending events is a great way to interact with people. You have that face-to-face rapport. So many people now, are hiding behind email and
Right.
easy, but it really it depends on the scenario, but you can find on LinkedIn what associations is this person a part of. So I've identified a few people that are really key to me meeting. And so maybe I can go to those association meetings
I
and
see.
do some interaction there. And then I mentioned earlier talking to lower level people. So maybe you don't start out with the president of the business, but you're starting out with a analyst in a department. And that analyst is going to be much less defensive about talking to you than somebody higher up. And then you can ask for an introduction from that person. But a warm introduction is always better than the cold call.
How would I even find an analyst name to reach out to?
The internet. LinkedIn is great.
Mhm.
LinkedIn is great. I was giving you a scenario before we went live, where I recently was researching an issue, and I was asking ChatGPT, and it gave me a pinpointed list. A couple
Really?
of those names were wrong, but I did additional research. But it gave me that hunch of where to start with.
Huh.
But a lot of that information is online now.
Do you have any luck like reaching like on a DM on LinkedIn or something? Does that work?
Where I've used LinkedIn is if I'm going to an association meeting, I will make a list of all the people that I want to meet with, and the day of, not a week before because they're all lost by then, but the day of an association meeting or trade show or whatever that I'm going to, I'll spend 20 minutes in the morning sending notes out. Hi, Julie, I'm going to be at the blah, blah, blah event today. Hope I get to see you.
Okay.
Short and sweet, 2 sentences. And then they do run into you. A lot of times you'll find these people also want to know other people in the room. They want to meet with people, and so sending them a little note, hope to see you. You're fresh on their mind that morning. Again, it's an extra step, and nobody wants to do that at 7 in the morning before an association meeting, but it's effective. And then there's the follow-up afterwards
Right.
that says, great to see you today. As far as cold, just emails on LinkedIn, or messages, I have gotten traction off that before.
Really?
Yep, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So back to you have the call person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just starting out, you won't have that. So
Yeah.
how do you do that yourself? I mean, what's the script like? What are you trying to achieve there?
Well, it's uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
It's very uncomfortable to call people blindly. We're all, I think, very anti phone calls right now, but you don't want to call the president of the company. He doesn't want to hear from you. He doesn't want a cold call.
Right.
The analyst, that's more fitting for somebody that's more at an analyst or manager level. They're going to be a little bit more willing to take your call from my experience. And that is just an opening towards a discussion. Hey, I'm Tiffany. I work with ABC company near you. I've helped them fix this issue. I wondered if you would have 20 minutes to chat next week. Offer a very small time commitment on their end
Okay.
and offer something to them. You're not calling and in this 30-second elevator pitch trying to sell them something over the phone. Not appropriate, not fitting. But the cold call is more from that trying to get a few minutes from them. You're establishing that you've worked with somebody, you've solved an issue for someone in a similar business as them, and trying to warm that up. And in order to force myself to do this, I have also booked time on my calendar. Like
Okay.
I'm only gonna have to do this for 30 minutes. Me and a colleague, to help us be accountable because we're fortunate to not have a micromanaging boss, but we knew we needed to do this terrible practice. We would schedule 30 minutes on our calendar. We would go on mute, but be on Zoom and just sit there and call people. And then we would hang up and we would be there and be like, oh my goodness, this person just answered and they agreed to a 20-minute call next week. So you can incorporate that with a colleague, another small business owner to celebrate the wins when you get them. But I actually got a meeting with a state CIO that way. which blew my mind.
Yeah.
But you might be surprised. Some weeks you might get nothing, but it's worth 30 minutes to make some phone calls.
Mhm. So you get it just to get a list of companies or names from your research,
Yep.
and then you make that commitment to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I read this book a bit ago, and the guy was talking about like to be a good entrepreneur or business owner, you'll get nothing unless you ask for it. You have to ask. People won't give, but you have to ask. And he said this act of asking is like a muscle that you have to exercise. It gets stronger the more you do it. The hardest part is taking the first step to do it.
And was that the 5 Hour Work Week book?
No,
Oh, okay.
it was the Million Dollar Weekend, Noah Kagan. It's a
Okay.
really fantastic book. Sounds clickbaity, but it's not.
I like that approach though. The 5 Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss, yeah.
Which I think he's done an updated version of that. But I remember the first edition, he said he challenged people to go out and like ask the opposite sex for their phone number. Like
Mhm.
even if you're married, go throw it in the trash. It was pushing yourself out of your comfort level
Right.
that was the exercise. So I do think it's just like public speaking. You have to exercise it so that you're more comfortable.
So when you make those calls, how do you figure out your script so that you just don't sound like some other random cold call guy?
Well, the example that I gave earlier, where you're talking about where you've helped somebody else,
Mhm.
I think that's the most impactful because you're kind of warming up the call yourself. So it's not their colleague that's referred you, but you're saying, hey, Dave, I worked with the Cincinnati Chamber last year and helped them improve their click rate by X. Would you have time for me to talk to you about how I did that? So, you're going in, focusing on your expertise and how you've helped solve a problem that might be their problem. They may say, oh no, we have more turnover clicks than we've ever needed. Okay, well, thank you. Well, you've just, solved, you can eliminate that person off your list.
Right.
But yeah, warming it up yourself, warming up that lead by talking about your expertise and how you've helped other people. If you haven't helped anyone else, you probably shouldn't be calling someone.
It's always got to be a first time.
There does. And you need to almost give away that service that first time. It's an
Okay.
early bird discount or
Right, okay.
early adopter discount is what
Yeah.
I've heard it called before,
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to sell to a little store around the corner, that process is way different than what we're talking about here. So
Mhm.
what does everybody need to know about like the procurement process that you have to go through when you're going to bag a big company like that?
Yes, very different. And my son actually works for ADP and he goes door to door selling to small businesses. And the thought of what he does terrifies me because I'm like, how do you just walk in there and do that?
Right.
But yes, it's a very different process. And so to prepare for the GEs, the Procter and Gamble's, Home Depots of the world, you've got to have your insurance in order. You've got to have, all those pieces because they're going to ask for those things. So you might be able to find, procurement documents online. Some of the bigger companies have procurement centers and with technology now, a lot of that you could research, how other things have processed. What have they expected from other suppliers? You had asked me earlier about mistakes that I've made. And I remember going to Canada to meet with a large Walmart distributor, and I had focused all my time on packaging and making sure the product looked beautiful because those are the important things to me. And they started dialing in on the cost to make my product. And I didn't have any of that lined up. And it still makes me kind of sick to my stomach to think about being in that meeting and being so unprepared. So you really have to reverse what you want to think about and what you want to talk about and think about what's important to them. Well, their cost per piece is important to them. And so thinking like them and trying to kind of switch that. And you might even practice with somebody. So go to somebody that a trusted advisor or mentor and say, I want you to play the role of this and really challenge me on my pitch
Mm-hmm.
and get a different perspective, because I think it's easy. I have been a small business owner, and it's very easy to get consumed with what you think is important
Right,
and not thinking through the other side of the table.
right.
Yeah.
So if you're a small business, you're a small business. So how would you recommend not being dismissed as too small for the customer?
I think that is a challenge, and I've heard it from other like business leaders that that company is risky to do business with because they're
Right.
so small. So I think what you have to do is find a sweet spot that would be a low risk proposition to enter in a deal with you. So maybe it is a small scale proof of concept. If you have a service, you have something like that. So like maybe you're offering a training service. If you could offer that at a lower cost to a smaller group of their workforce to engage in that, but you know tailoring back to a smaller risk
Mhm.
way to begin doing business with you, um I think might be a good way to lower that.
Okay. But if you give them a low price in the beginning, won't they expect to always have that price?
Not if you talk about it up front.
Okay.
Not if you say
Communication, right?
communication, where we all started. um but I have been in this situation where we've talked about early adopter discounts, and then here's what it would look like at 12 months, here's what it would look like if we did this, but I'd like to get you going. And sometimes don't, oh my goodness, this is just remembered something. A lot of times small businesses do what I call selling against yourself. So
Okay.
you've discounted it before anybody's asked you to discount it.
Right. Yeah.
So let me be clear, don't discount it if you don't have to. What I'm talking about is maybe instead of walking in and saying, we can train all 4,000 of your employees, you say, here are we've found that our training can reduce turnover by 10%.
Okay.
Show them the metrics. Remember on the med pick, we talked about metrics. What does it cost for them to replace people?
Right.
So then you're turning it into a conversation about savings for them. And then you can offer, we could do just your maybe front of house workers. We'll just do that to start out with. So it's not necessarily about making it cheaper, but more of a scaled down version of what you have to offer.
Mhm.
So just reducing the risk involved and really demonstrating. But you have to have a lot of confidence in your product to do that.
Right.
Because the worst thing that can happen is they end with that and they've got no return on it and they can't value it. So
Yeah.
that qualifying, if the audience reads the MedPick methodology, they'll learn more about how to identify that metrics. So you want to use a metrics that's impactful to your audience. They may not care about turnover, may not be related at all to their job, but maybe what their most important piece of their strategy and what they get judged and measured on is quality. So maybe the quality control is most important to your decision maker. So that's that discovery process of learning what metrics are most important to your buyer and then delivering them a package that can help with that. Do we have a question?
Yeah. So Dee asked, how do you use this strategy for someone in the food industry?
I'm assuming by food industry, we're talking about maybe a restaurant.
Yeah, or it could be food products. Maybe you can pop in a little bit more information. But like if I wanted to, my thought would be, what if I wanted to sell prepared food products to like a big company or something, for resale or to Walmart, like you said.
Yeah. Well, I think food, what a great thing to sell. I haven't really sold food before, but that to me just says, wow, delivering samples, making sure samples get to that person would be a great way to start to really demonstrate the quality of what you're
Mhm.
bringing.
Yeah, another example could be like catering
Mhm.
to a big company.
My daughter used to sell catering. That was one of her first jobs out of school. And she did that. She went door to door delivering samples to she made herself a database of all the key um, decision makers, for catering. I think that maybe we got a
Yeah, she
caterer
said
or
caterer
restaurant.
restaurant.
Okay. Well, I can tell you what my daughter did, who is a superstar.
Here's a strategy coming. Write this down, everybody. It's a
She,
strategy.
yes, she is in sales, and I think she got contracts with most all the big businesses around.
Wow.
And she did. She made a database, and don't forget, we can pick up the phone and call the business and say, "Who handles catering for you?"
Right.
We can pick up the phone and just call.
Oh, yeah.
And she spent a lot of time making her list of who it was. And then she was there, morning, early morning, getting in there, delivering little samples. And she won a lot of contracts that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And then always, delivering the service at the level that they need. So getting the food there on time. That's the other part of sales, is not just the initial sale, but being there throughout. Because really, the ideal scenario is you win the business, but you keep the business and you expand the business, which is also a big part of my job. So, and that really comes down to delivering the product well,
And maintaining the relationship.
maintaining that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in trying to sell a company and they know they're a big company and they know that you need them and then they start kind of asking for more than they deserve? How do you kind of level the playing field so that they don't take advantage of you that way?
I have been in that scenario before, where they think they hold all the cards.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I become a human. And what I mean by that is I have had this really basic conversation of, look, you are employed by Acme Corporation to do a job. I have this business and I'm trying to do a job. And what we're trying to find here is a sweet spot where you get something that you need that's going to solve this problem, and I get you as a customer, and we work together for a long time. And so you just kind of like level set that on, we're both here to just do a job, and we're just trying to find that happy medium where we can work together. And I feel like that's kind of that human reset of
Right.
it takes a little bit of the gusto out of the argumentative conversation. And I've had a customer that was really bullying on this contract one time, and I did. I said, "Look, we have to make some money here too.
Right.
You're trying to save money, but I also have to make some money on this. Like, we're both in this to do business." And it really level set the conversation a little bit. And I think I even got a laugh out of it. So
I've had this moment, I want to see if you have too, but like where you work really hard to get this big giant client and finally you get the call and they say yes to everything and you hang up the phone and then suddenly you think like, oh, SH,
yeah.
how am I going to do this now? Because you were so focused on getting it, you hadn't really prepared for the aftermath.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have. I have been in that situation. What's your question? How do you handle that?
Yeah, 'cause I'm thinking, and really it's prep on the beginning, but still, I have been overwhelmed with some exuberance, where I'm just like, I need to get this. I want to bag this big one, at all costs. And sometimes those costs are too big.
At the end of it, you're like, wow. I think conversations, and that's also, it's so challenging when you're a small business because you're kind of operating in a silo. You don't have somebody else to bounce that idea off of.
Mm.
So I've always been a fan of, a brain trust, I think is what someone called it once, is your, mentors, your trusted advisors. And sometimes you just have to create those by interactions that you've had, your smart people that you've seen. I've had people approach me before and just say, "Hey, can I pick your brain?"
Right.
So maybe in that scenario, you've got this customer, you've just bagged it, and you're like, what do I do now? Maybe that's where you can lean in with your trusted advisors to plot out, or just have a follow-up conversation.
Mhm.
Goes back to that communication. A follow-up conversation that says, hey, I know we talked, we've got this deal done. What are your expectations? Could we start with this 6 weeks out, this 12 weeks out, and kind of plot it out into digestible chunks?
Okay. Along those lines again, what was the hardest rejection that you ever kind of faced, and how'd you bounce back from that?
Gosh, the hardest rejection. There have been so many, Dave. That's the hardest part of sales. Is you have to be able to dust your shoulders off and keep going.
Yeah.
Well, probably my biggest rejection that sticks with me is just when I had a product myself. I was an inventor back in the day, and um I thought that we were progressing, and then a competitor actually came into the market and started like stealing away all the bigger contracts that I thought I was in line to get.
Oh, gosh.
And it was a lot of recalibration. Like, you have to just go back to the drawing board and figure out your product and what are you bringing to the table? And that's really, those are those hard assessments. And I do a debrief after every loss.
Okay.
Because that's the best thing that you can do, is take away a lesson from your loss.
Right.
So I do a debrief. And so I could almost, and that's where I made the recommendation on using MedPick or the Challenger sale. MedPick really helps you. I thought about this yesterday. It's kind of like a bingo card. So you've got your list of all the things that you need to discover about this prospect, and you need to kind of cross over each one of those. What are their metrics that are important to them? Who's the economic buyer? So at the end of a lost deal, it's identifying, what did I miss? And sometimes you missed that there was another competitor in the door, and you didn't ask enough questions in your discovery phase of the deal to understand who your competitors were. Or maybe they have a tight relationship. It's their neighbor or it's their brother that's
Right.
running that. And you
Yeah.
could never win that deal in a million years, even if you had the best, bright, shiny product. So it's really that debrief and learning from it, so that the next one, and then don't forget, if you've been selling to GE, and at the end of the day, you've lost that deal, you've gained a lot of knowledge in that discovery.
Mhm.
And maybe you can go to another manufacturer and use some of that intelligence to try to sell to the next one. So dust your shoulders off, keep going.
I mean, you kind of talked about this, but talk a little bit more about, what role has persistence like kind of played into the success of your career?
It's central, as I said earlier, like dusting your shoulders off, being persistent. There are some people, and I've sold to government for a long time. And so that persistence really does pay off. And sometimes they'll move from a manager on up through their career. And then all of a sudden, you've got this person you've been calling on for 5 years now has even more influence and power than they've had before. And I had actually a former customer reach out to me recently and asked me to be a reference for him because he was taking a CIO role somewhere else.
Really?
So that persistence, that alliance and partnership with your customers can really build your career over time. And people appreciate you showing up over and over.
Yeah. Um, I mean, what's like the biggest myth that you think a small business believes about selling to big companies? What are the misconceptions?
I think that's probably centered around their own product,
Mm-hmm.
that they have to have it or that they need it. Or when I've been in that role of, having the product, it being mine, you're so close to it that you have a challenge being objective. And so the myth is everybody needs this, everybody wants it,
Right.
everybody's going to buy it.
Yeah.
And that's just not reality.
Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
to do that gut check and go, what are my old SWOT analysis, right? What are my strengths, my weaknesses, the opportunities, and where are my threats? And really be critical. And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest myth. The myth about sales, specifically, would be that it happens quickly, and it just usually doesn't. It takes years to establish relationships, sales. I think I saw in being at SBDC, I'm sure you all have the stats more, but I remember when I had my own business, reading that it takes 5 years to really, I don't know, is that the benchmark still?
More or less.
Maybe.
Yeah.
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 That, it takes 5 years. And so not beating yourself up, keeping your day job. I used to work all day and then come home and then work as an entrepreneur at night.
Mm,
And, it just, it doesn't happen quickly.
right.
And sales is the same way. Those big meteor deals take time to foster, to build your expertise among those people. Um, and I hear my husband, who's president of an organization, he gets annoyed by salespeople. So I try to tell him to give patience
Right.
to
Little
those
grace.
people.
Yeah.
Give a little patience. He's like, it's cocktail hour at this trade show. I don't want to go to that. And I'm like, go. People have spent their whole week trying to prepare to talk to you. So go and listen to them. And so just being approachable and a human at the end of the day goes a long way with your interactions with people and not trying to hard sell them.
Yeah. Well, folks out there, we're coming up close to the hour. So if you have any questions, put those in the chat and we'll talk to Tiffany about that. This is a good opportunity for you. So if you were to give our small business owners just one tip, if they're starting today, what was the single first step you'd ask them to take to sell to a bigger corporation?
Build your strategy. Like, take time to build out a strategy around it.
Mhm.
I think that that's one of those things that people can just start going after it and start working the deal instead of building out a strategy around it. I even still to this day, not something that I have to present to anyone, but I make a PowerPoint slide and I identify my strategy for a sales, that like a deal that I'm going after, so that I in my own mind know what I'm doing.
Okay.
So building out the strategy, I think implementing the MedPick sales methodology, and then also the challenger methodology. I think those are great resources for somebody.
And if we Google those two things, we would get.
You will.
Yeah,
Yes,
interesting.
I double checked. Yeah. So MedPick is MEDPIC,
Okay.
and then the challenger sales is
Okay.
yeah.
Tiffany, what's a lesson you learned the hard way that you tell your younger self, if you could?
Oh, that's such a trick question, Dave.
It is.
Gosh, that you're gonna mess up and it's gonna be okay.
Okay.
You'll learn something from it,
Yeah.
right? Because we're always our biggest critic at the end of the day. And you can walk out of meetings and go, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And even me, somebody that went to school for communication, I sell all day. I still have those moments where I kick myself after a meeting and go, I didn't handle that well. And you just have to take every moment as a learning opportunity and correct and be better the next time.
Hmm. Let's circle back real quick here. See, okay. Hey, Amanada. She asked, what is the strategy for selling handmade design clothing? Yeah.
Send me a link. No, I'm joking.
She has some beautiful stuff. I've been out to her shop before.
Handmade design clothing. And I guess since we're talking about elephants, we're talking about selling to big retailers.
Yeah.
So I would say find out who are you wanting to sell to. So especially these bigger companies, Target, all the big major retailers across the country, they go to trade shows. So I had a product that I was going to sell to the big Home Depots and those. See, I don't even know the category of those retailers, 'cause that's how distant I was from it. So sometimes you're walking into a segment and you go, I don't really know where these people go to. Well, they all have trade shows that they have to attend every year. So if you wanted to sell to a Target, you wanted to sell to Dillard's or any of those, find out what those trade shows are that they go. You might be able to look at the buyer's website or LinkedIn's
Mhm.
and see like where's their event history. A lot of people will tag where they've been at trade shows. You can get a booth or you can just attend. I got a booth at a big, what was that called? The National Home Remodeler Expo or something like
Right.
that.
Huh?
And I had the most basic booth that you could have, but it showed my product and it got tons of people around me. So you've just got to really do that research on where do those buyers for those big national chains go if you're wanting to sell to one of those. And then, demonstrate your product, show it to them, make it great, find out if they have small business programs. A lot of these have,
That's true.
they want to sell to, or they want to buy from small businesses, minority businesses, get all those credentials that you can. I know SBDC has great resources to help
Mhm.
people getting registered as women minority businesses.
Right.
But those certifications might help you as well. And then, sending samples. Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yep. Yep.
Well, Tiffany, this has been fantastic, and thank you so much for just sharing all your knowledge and some of the techniques that you use. I've taken away a lot. I know you guys have too. So I hope you guys caught at least one strategy you can run with maybe today. So maybe it's doing smarter research. That's start at the beginning. I think that's the most important thing that I'm taking away. And also, if I'm reiterating, none of this happens overnight. It's a long process, and persistence is really, really important. So,
Yep.
Tiffany, thanks again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I hope it was beneficial for everyone.
And thanks everybody for joining today on another Toolkit Tuesday. And if you hang on just a second, you get a little survey. The surveys really help us out a lot. Wouldn't mind taking a second just to fill that up for me. And probably tomorrow sometime, we will send out a replay of this so you can watch it over and over again. And we'll have it posted on our YouTube channel as well. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us for another Toolkit Tuesday.
Thanks, Abe.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.